Thank you, Jen. Welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet. In addition to the Cabinet members and other councillors present in the room, we also have some councillors joining our meeting remotely. I will now check that they can hear us and we them. So remotely we have Councillor Ange Tyler.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can hear you and see you.
Thank you. Cabinet support members, we have Councillor Jenny Bartlett.
Good afternoon, Leader. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor John Hardwick.
Good afternoon, Leader. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. Councillor Selden. Not with us this afternoon. Councillor Peter Chipman is present in the room. Councillor Yolandi Watson. Not today. And group leaders or representatives and scrutiny chairs. First of all, Councillor Terry James.
I can see and hear you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jonathan Lester.
Yes, I can see and hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Matthews.
Yeah, I can see and hear you, Leader, but you're rather faint. You're not coming over very loud. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matthews. I'll do my best to speak up. Councillor Tony Fagan is with us in the room. Councillor William Wilding.
Thank you, Leader. I can hear and see.
Councillor Philip Howells as Scrutiny Chair. Councillor Philip Howells, are you with us? No. And Councillor Lester Swingle has sent her apologies. We also have a number of officers attending who will be introduced as they are called upon. So I will now formally open the meeting. We had a Cabinet meeting this morning. One of the key issues to talk about continuing is the issue of COVID. I'd like to just make a few comments, if I may, at the beginning of this meeting, to mention that while central government are suggesting that some sort of freedom has come to us, we as the Cabinet in Herefordshire remain extremely concerned about the health and welfare of our residents. Everyone in Herefordshire has played a huge part during the COVID pandemic, and we want to thank you all. We have consistently had a lower rate of infection than the majority of counties in the country. National restrictions have been eased, but coronavirus is not going away. The number of cases in Herefordshire is currently doubling every 7 days. Rates are extremely high in teenagers and young adults. This will inevitably lead to vulnerable residents being admitted to our hospital and an increase in long-term COVID in the future. It places a strain on many services through more people needing to isolate. Nobody knows the impact of long COVID. It could have a significant effect on people's lives for many years, so we must continue to be cautious. I implore everyone to keep your distance from others, wear a mask in public places, and get vaccinated as soon as you can. We need your help to ensure that all our residents can be kept safe. This meeting is being hosted in a COVID-safe venue with a limited number of people in attendance to ensure social distancing can be observed. We can no longer meet virtually due to the national requirements to meet in person for public meetings. However, despite the end of national restrictions, we continue to observe these preventative practices to help protect each other. Going on to the formal part of the meeting, the agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure the recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Microphones should be muted when you are not speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record our public meetings, provided that it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. As we move through the agenda, in addition to the discussion by Cabinet members, I will invite group leaders or their representatives in turn to provide views and questions from their group on each item. Where appropriate, I will call on scrutiny chairpersons to comment on behalf of their committee.
Leader, sorry to interrupt. There's a problem with the live link. There's no link to it on the council pages. We've got a number of people messaging to say that they can't access the link. I've just gone online and it's not there.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Jan, are you able to find out?
Of course, till
I think we'll just wait a moment or two to see whether we can get the link back up and live.
So we are streaming, Chair. It's the link from the Heritage Council agenda page. I think it's missing, which we'll sort out for you.
Anybody translate that?
So we are streaming, it's just no one can access the link.
Surely they can access it from YouTube. And
If
YouTube
they do a search, or it could be on our comms page as well. I think it's accessible. We're happy it's accessible.
well, the problem is, if you know what you need to know, you can access it. But if you don't know, there's no point us saying go to the Heritage Council YouTube because people can't hear us.
There are 21 people currently watching it on YouTube.
And see it on YouTube. I can see it through the council's link, is that?
Yes.
So, yeah, if people can hear us. If they can hear us,
Well, if they know where to go to find us,
there's no point in telling people where to find us because they won't.
no.
They can't access the link through the council site, can't access it directly.
Well,
You should have been brought until it's on.
Yeah. I think it's the link through the council website.
so when will we know it's accessible through the council website?
We'll be told when the link's live, okay? So that's just doing that.
So thank you for your patience, everybody.
Six people watching us.
Good. So hopefully anybody who wants to hear is able to do so. They can always go to the recording later if they wish. So we'll continue as mentioning that voting will be undertaken by a show of hands in the room. Only cabinet members may vote, and unfortunately with Councillor Tyler being remote, she will be able to speak, but not vote. So going on to the agenda, item 1 is apologies for absence. Have any apologies been notified to the clerk? So,
I've had apologies from Councillor Swinglehurst and Councillor Selden.
thank you. So Councillor Selden, Councillor Swinglehurst, apologies. Declarations of interest. Are there any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interests for items on the agenda today? I see none, thank you. Item 3 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of June. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer. Cabinet members, are you content that the minutes are an accurate record? Could I have a vote, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. So moving on then to receive any questions from members of the public. We have 14 questions from members of the public. A response has been published as a supplement to the agenda papers. There is an opportunity for questioners to ask a supplemental question that will either come as a written supplementary or people are allowed to join the meeting if they wish to live. Mrs. Prothero does not have a supplemental as I understand it. Ms. J. Liddell is not present and has not sent a supplemental. Mr. A. Bridges has sent a written supplemental. I think the practice is for the clerk to read this question out.
Yes, that's fine, Leader. Mr. Bridges, thanks Councillor Harrington for the detailed response, which is most appreciated. As you are aware, the access and egress to the railway station is currently one way in and out and causes all sorts of traffic issues with the junction of Morrison. As part of the design work, there needs to be a better flowing system of traffic for all modes of transport, as the current design layout just doesn't work today. Can we please ensure that as part of the works there is more than one way in and out of the new transport hub, and also remove the traffic lights and replace with roundabouts? Otherwise, it will just become more of a bottleneck and will not resolve what is trying to achieve.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Bridges. It's a very good point, which has been raised by many other people. At the moment, we don't have a design, as we'll discover as we talk through this meeting today. But the idea that we would only have one access point has been, something that's been discounted by myself. So two access points, an entrance and an access. An entrance and an exit is the direction that we'll be giving to our designers.
Thank you very much. The next question was from Mr. P. Rudd. We have no supplemental. Mr. C. Palgrave, again, no supplemental. But Mr. E. Warford has sent a written supplemental. This again is for Councillor Harrington. The clerk is able to read this question out, please.
Thank you for your response to my question on groundwater levels beneath the City Link Road and groundwater flow rates under the Essex Farms site. I am heartened to hear that the development of our natural capital in the form of a city wetland wildlife reserve with ponds for the flood alleviation will be considered in the scheme. My question remains unanswered on the impact of water abstraction by Heineken and Bavara on water levels in proposed development areas. Is the technical due diligence question that relates to flood management over a major development site. Engineers have calculated the need to raise ground levels, but we don't know the impact on groundwater levels if commercial water abstraction ceased. The chances are, like many flood zones, that a combination of exceptional surface and subsurface flows could combine to create exceptional flooding conditions. The main river rises almost 7 metres in exceptional floods, and the city groundwater level also rises. Did planners overlook the very high water volumes pumped out of the city aquifer and the impact, if pumping ceased, on the peak groundwater levels across the development site?
Well, thank you, Mr. Morford, for that follow-up question. That's a very technical question, which I can't answer in the room. I mean, your general point was enough due diligence given to the impacts of flooding on that area through the Yaser Brook, and did we do enough mitigation? My personal view is that we haven't yet done enough mitigation if we were to continue with previous plans, but we are not necessarily, we are not continuing with some of the plans for the development of the site. But I'll get a written response to you in detail. Whether we can get that information for Vara and Heineken, I'm sure someone has it somewhere.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Next question was from Dr. Geeson. There's no supplementary. Mr. M. Wilmot, again, no supplementary, and Ms. J. Furness, again, no supplementary. But we do have a supplementary from Mr. Palgrave. So again, if that could be read out, we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
The HCCTP business case from November 2015 stated that new trees and shrubs would be planted along the CLR to compensate for the loss of greenery associated with the scheme. Also, that the then design of the transport hub included the introduction of resin-bound footways and the planting of new trees in the station's forecourt. Have the CLR trees been planted, and is the commitment to plant trees in the station forecourt going to be met?
Thank you very much, Mr. Palgrave. No, I don't think the commitment has been met yet, but then neither has a lot of the neither has the delivery of a lot of the outcomes that were promised at this point. I can assure you that as an administration, we intend to plant a huge amount of greenery and plant trees, hopefully along both the City Link Road and directly outside the station. But in actual fact, we are discussing whether or not we would have an apple orchard outside of the train station. What better way to arrive in Herefordshire than to walk outside instead of see an over-engineered metal sculpture or block work that's highly expensive and not particularly any more useful than a normal surface, and instead see a garden in front of you or a specimen orchard to be able to greet you and walk you into town. So yes, that's something that we will definitely be concentrating on.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Moving on then to the next question was from Mrs. Wegg-Crosser. We do not have a supplemental. We do have supplemental questions from the next three. First of all, from Mr. T. Meadows. Again, this is one for Councillor Harrington.
The question is, when did you as a new administration become aware that the City Link Road wasn't actually paid for?
Not immediately, strangely enough. You would think as the cabinet member, I would have been made aware of that fairly quickly, but it was about 6 months to my tenure that it was discovered, partly because we had started an investigation into the project management and the financial accounts of the road.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. I move on then to the next question from the Ms. E. Mariovetska. Thank you.
I would like to thank Councillor Harvey for her response. I appreciate the work and efforts Councillor Harvey put in over many years to try and obtain good project management and tight budgetary control on large capital projects. However, the swap report on Blue School House seemed to make little to no difference as to how capital budgets were managed by the previous administration. The current report on the City Link Road appears to indicate that no lessons were learned from that swap report. What reassurance can the public receive that money spent on a further swap report on the City Link Road will actually change the culture and management of public money in Herefordshire to better ensure that there is robust financial management and that the council will obtain valuable money for local taxpayers?
Well, thank you, Mrs. Morawiecka, for that question. I can understand that members of the public listening will be wondering what it is that needs to be done in order to learn lessons like these. I think all that I can say is that there are different hands on the tiller now. We are a different administration to the one under which these issues were generated. We also have a new chief executive who is sending very strong messages to officers about his expectations in terms of how projects are to be delivered and how capital programmes are to be managed. We have a Section 151 officer who is all over the finances and is keeping a very tight control on how we release funds and under what conditions we start projects going. So I think with those three differences coming together in a positive and reinforcing fashion, I hope that we will not find ourselves in this position again, and that lessons will be learned, and they are being learned, and that we can make sure that the projects under our control now are delivered in an organised, timely and financially controlled fashion.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. And finally, a supplementary question from Mr. A. Marievetsky, sorry. And this one is for Councillor Harrington, I think.
Yes. Thank you for the detailed response, though I note that the answer does not provide the information as to which council meeting in 2017 this key decision was taken. Please would you provide the date of the Herefordshire Council meeting at which the key decision to spend £563,000 was approved? My supplementary question is, as this was a key decision, and with the value being in excess of £500,000, the design work should have gone out to competitive tender to ensure value for money for the taxpayer. Where was the competitive tender advertised, and if not, why not?
Well, that's a question I can't actually answer because I wasn't in the administration, and I presume we can give a written answer. I'll give you a written answer.
I think that's the best way. Thank you. Thank you very much. So the next item is questions from councillors. We have 3 questions from councillors. A response has been published. Again, those councillors who have submitted questions have the opportunity to submit a written supplementary or to join the meeting and ask their question live. So the first question was from Councillor Tracy Bowes, and she has submitted a supplemental question. This again is for you, Councillor Harrington.
Thank you for your response, and in the interest of transparency, are there any other areas of concern the public should be aware of?
Well, I don't know if you mean just relation to this into the HCCTP or other areas. I think, to be honest, we're getting to the end of the we're getting to the back of the cupboard of things that we need to tell the public about that have not been entirely transparently displayed in the past. So nothing obvious, but if there is, it'll go into the public domain because we are publicly accountable. What's the point of being elected by the public to be accountable? And the very first thing that we do is seek to protect our own reputation, or the reputation even of a different administration. So if anything is looming, and we have always asked for things that were looming to be brought to us, and that's why it was very disappointing that it took 6 months for me to be told that the compulsory purchase mechanism we used meant that we were going to overspend on the land purchases. And we are pretty much assured that that won't happen again. But in terms of what's still in the cupboard, I think the door's quite wide open at the moment and the light's in there.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. So the second question was from Councillor William Wilding. He is attending. I don't know whether Councillor Wilding has a supplemental question.
Yes, thank you, Leader, I do. So I thank Councillor Harrington for his answer, which suggests that we ask the previous Conservative administration to explain, 1, how did they get the design and cost of this road so disastrously wrong? 2, why did the design not reflect the need to encourage active travel measures linking to the station? And 3, where did the money needed to create a modern travel hub go? Thank you.
Councillor Wilding, I'm not sure Councillor Harrington can necessarily answer that, but
I can't necessarily answer that, no, because unfortunately, you know, thinkings of the previous administration are for themselves to explain or otherwise. I think in relation to your last question, quite simply, the money meant for active travel measures, including a decent cycle path, if one was originally designed or planned, and other elements, has gone on building the road or purchasing the land to build the road.
thank you, Councillor Harrington. I'll move on then. The last question was from Councillor Paul Andrews. I don't know whether he has a supplemental question. I don't think she's available. So thank you for those questions. So we move on then to item 6, which is the substantive item on this agenda. It's about the Hereford City Centre Transport Package, and the purpose is to present an update on the programme delivery so far, to highlight the elements of the project that have exceeded their forecast costs, and to set out the plan for delivery of the remaining projects in the programme. This report will also detail the residual land acquisition costs and liabilities that will need to be met from the existing capital budget. The item begins on page 25 of the agenda pack, and I'll pass straight over to Councillor Harrington for an introduction.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to introduce this report to Cabinet, which seeks to update members on the current status of the Hereford City Centre Transport Package, the HCCTP. After that, I will hand over to the Interim Director of Economy and Place, Mr. Neil Taylor, to give some more technical detail. This is a well-written decision report which lays out where we find ourselves in 2021 and what we need to do next to ensure we deliver the outcomes of the Hereford City Centre Transport Package scheme as originally promised, which are broadly still desirable and in fact we're contractually obligated to deliver in order to meet our funding conditions. So it's a report that asks where have we got to, what have we actually delivered, what's left in the pot, what have we paid out so far, have we got good value for what we paid out so far, how much more capital will we need to finish the job properly, how will we design the transport hub and the other measures that we should have delivered. So this report, in relation to the last comment, also allows us to use what's left in the existing budget to fully design the hub, the improvements to Commercial Street, to Blue School and New Market Street. So yeah, I'm just going to give a little bit of the background. I'm going to keep my introduction fairly brief because the report is detailed and precise, and I'm sure we've all read it. We all want to have a good discussion, a comprehensive discussion about this afternoon. And it is a report that deserves a comprehensive, thoughtful discussion because to be quite frank, there are many elements of this project which don't seem to have been appropriately thought out, and certainly not thought out perfectly at several landmark opportunities along the way, when they really should have been. This is in many ways yet another classic salutary tale of poor leadership and poor project management delivered by both government and local authorities and politicians. And salutary means that you learn a lesson from an unpleasant experience. And unfortunately, you can't have repeat salutary tales. But as we've discovered from many things that we've inherited from the previous Conservative administration in relation to the failure to deliver a South-wide transport package because of the failure of the procurement that once again was kept quiet for many, many months, the failure to deliver the City Link Road adequately, the failure to deliver the scheme, but even the element that they say they delivered, they have not delivered adequately. And we can't just keep saying that we'll do things better and we'll learn lessons if we don't change the structures and we don't change the mechanisms. And I'm very grateful to report that we have now changed the management of these projects so that they will be managed internally and separate from the departments that are seeking to deliver them. So if it's a transport scheme, it will not be run by the transport department. It'll be run centrally and will obviously in conjunction with the transport department. Because otherwise you get the kind of silo workings that we get where things start to go wrong and no one is independently or judiciously looking at them as they start to go wrong. So the basic history of this Hereford City Centre Transport Package was way back at the end of the 2000s when Hereford Futures was formed essentially to gift some developers the old cattle market in exchange for a retail centre that was to be built there, and then exchange for opportunities for us as a council to develop land, which is the Burton Meadows at the back to the north and to the east. And this was then combined, a City Link Road was then identified as something that needed to be built in order to access this land that was going to be developed on at a later date. That was going to be, it was prudential borrowing that was used to deliver that, what was purported to be used to deliver that. But at some point then, we applied also for funding from the LEP to bring forward a transport scheme for sustainable and alternative transport, which would include moving the bus station from where it is now across to the railway station and making improvements to Commercial Street, Blue School Street and New Market Street, and particularly creating an avenue so that when you came out of the station, or went to the station, you had a nice avenue up through the city. In the council's own, the previous council, Conservative Council's own local transport plan, And in its bidding documents, they specifically said that the intention in terms of sustainable and active travel measures was to increase the use of cycling and walking. What we ended up getting was a road built and not enough money left in the pot to build anything else. Now, as I said, Neil will go through the detail in more forensically in a minute. But essentially, I'm a bit frustrated because this is the sort of thing that seems to happen and seems to regularly happen in local government. And it's been very surprising to a new administration such as ourselves that projects which have so much money involved and which are justified and argued on the basis of deliverable outcomes, which seem concrete at the time, very often don't seem to be delivered in the way that is satisfactory, and certainly not in the way that they were originally justified. And as I said to you earlier, we can't keep making these mistakes. Now, we have political differences with the previous administration. They will argue that they were not kept well informed. I can't accept that to the same level, because when we came in as administration, we went to look for issues. We went to ask for issues. We started investigations. We started changing the way that things were done. They had the opportunity to do that. So the rights and the wrongs of whether a city link road should be there or not, what it was supposed to do, what it was supposed to deliver, what we failed to deliver and promised to deliver, that all aside, if as politicians you are not doing your job, and if as politicians you are not keeping an eye on the ball, and you are not pressing forward with a vision and good governance, then you have a lot to answer for. And I'm going to leave it there and pass over to Neil.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I assume everyone can hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes, very well,
good.
thank you.
Thank you, good, lovely. The HCCTP is a project that was conceived as far back as 2009 and has had an ambition to deliver a new city link road, a series of public realm projects to create that sustainable transport entry into the city, and a sustainable transport hub which would link cycling, bus travel and the railway station all together to help people get about by sustainable means. Good ambition. A budget was established at 40.027 million. There was a cabinet report in 2013 that agreed the use of CPO powers to CPO the land required for the road and some further land required for regeneration purposes. There was then a further cabinet member decision record in 2015 to widen the envelope of those land acquisitions. And the project then proceeded under the management of the Major Infrastructure Delivery Board, which was an officer program management board that looked after capital projects, right through until 2017, when it became clear that there was a developing overspend on the land acquisition costs. And there is all sorts of legal legislation around compulsory purchase, as you can imagine. Taking people's property up from them by force is not an easy process, and there are tribunals and valuations and court hearings and all the rest of it to establish the value of the compensation, and that is in fact still going on to date, specifically related to the BP garage. So in 2017 there was a further cabinet member decision to utilise some of the contingency within the project financial envelope to cover some of that cost. The project has then been, the City Link Road element of the project has then been delivered and is now open. The property costs have escalated, along with some not significant costs, but there are some increasing costs on the actual road construction, but not hugely significant. The big costs are on the land acquisition due to the valuations and litigation that's been going on around those CPOs. We now find ourselves in a position in March 2021 where further money from the overall project envelope had to be allocated to land purchases, CPO compensation, whatever you like to call it, and that left us with insufficient money in the overall envelope to deliver the transport hub and the public realm. That is disappointing for the project, but it also gives us a problem with the LEP, who funded 14 million of this 40.027 million pounds, and we contractually committed to deliver a number of outputs, including the public realm and the transport hub. So we are obliged to the LEP to deliver those projects, apart from the fact that they are desirable projects for Hereford City to deliver. There have been a number of discussions around governance, and I'm not going to comment on that. But what I've done is brought this report forward with members to effectively draw a line under previous governance and the previous activity, draw a line under the brand of HCCTP, and initiate a further swap investigation into what happened on the City Link Road element of the scheme and the land acquisition costs, and then to establish a way forward in terms of delivering the LEP deliverables, which are the transport hub and the public realm projects. So if I just talk you through the recommendations one at a time and the reasons for those, that'll probably be a little bit clearer. So I've explained recommendation A, that Cabinet notes the fact that there is now insufficient capital left to complete the remaining projects. Recommendation B is that the Hereford City Centre Transport Programme be deconstructed, and that effectively the further projects proceed as individual projects, and that will allow us to proceed with a new governance mechanism, new design, and then we'll have to source new funding to deliver those projects, new project delivery funding for the construction work. This will also allow us to draw a line under the City Link Road, and recommendation C then is that the Chief Executive commissions a full swap audit of the expenditure on the programme to understand the cost escalation in both the road and the land acquisition and the governance around that, and what decisions were made and when and why. D is then moving on to the future, which is allocating the remaining funding of the programme, which is a little bit unclear at the minute because we have ongoing land tribunals with one of the CPO, one of the owners of one of the CPO properties that is not yet resolved. So we have covered the cost in our contingency that our lawyers have said are the upside and the downside, but there is no exact figure. So the way forward we're proposing is to use that funding to design the new transport hub, and fully cost that, which will and get planning, which means that we will then be in a position to capture short-term spend government funding to add to the LEP element of the funding that's involved to deliver that, and we can take a proper decision whether to get some government funding or whether to put that capital in as a council. But until we know the exact, the design, the details, what it's going to look like, we won't know exactly what the cost is. And then E is around the public realm projects, and there has been a desire, and in fact one of my tasks is to work through a new city master plan, which will look at sustainable transport, connectivity, public realm, and an economic and other economic and social issues, to produce a new master plan for how people move around the city, sorry. And the public realm projects will be picked up as part of that design, and then we will need to deliver them to deliver the LEP objectives that were set out in the original funding agreement. So as Councillor Harrington said, this is where we've been, this is where we are now, and this is where we want to go, and we will have our new governance processes in place now. We have new project directors in place, and we will, the chief executive will commission the swap audit into what happened previously, so we can draw a line under that. And that's about it, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Harrington, do you want to say anything more at the moment, or just
to say that my document crashed when I was reading my report, which is why I had to sound like I was talking from memory, so apologies. I will just say something before we open up the floor. I keep coming back to this issue about, the responsibility that councillors have to keep an eye on projects and to challenge often very overstretched officers to make sure that, that anything that is happening is we're cited on it. So the business case was produced in 2015. In 2017, there was another report my previous cabinet member, Conservative cabinet member, took a decision on, which essentially said that there was already a £3 million added out to that used up pretty much all of our sort of risk and reserve. And at that point, when you've used up all your reserves so quickly in a process, in a project, I think that's when someone should have said, well, let's have a really good discussion right now. Let's get this out in the open. Let's discuss what's happening, and let's see how we go forward now, making sure that we're getting best value out of our contractors, that we're getting best value, particularly out of our professional advisors, Balfour Beatty, Living Places, and WSP. Because when I came in as a cabinet member, for example, we already had apparently £250,000 put against professional fees for designing elements of the transport hub. But all I could actually see was 10 loosely bound sheets of technical drawings. When I came in as a cabinet member, we clearly said that our ambitions were slightly different from how the transport hub would look, that we wanted it to function better, relating to what Mr. Bridges said earlier about having an exit and an entrance. We were very disappointed to see that we put two huge buildings either side of the hub, or where the hub might go immediately. So instead of having space to the left or the right of the station, we had built, previous administration had given permission, well, they had supported either side of that, two huge buildings, which meant that we were struggling to find out where we were going to put the actual hub. And those kind of things make you realise how serious is an administration about doing the things that purports to be serious about, especially when it's bidding for money, when the only real obvious desire and pace seem to be in delivering a road. And I like very much our new interim director for economy and place, but I would actually say that you can't say you've delivered something if you haven't finished paying for it. So I don't even think that we've delivered the City Link Road element of the HCCTP. When I was given a report to review in 2021, I said, what is going on? What are the implications? What is the budget left? Why is this happening? And I was told essentially that we'd used a mechanism. Well, there were issues with extra land purchase, which I'm not quite clear how they were agreed, but I think the governance has been dug out eventually after many, many months of asking. But what wasn't clear to me was why we had used a mechanism, or if we had used a mechanism, why we hadn't been more aware that the mechanism we used, which was essentially paying people who had properties 90% of what we thought it was worth, but they didn't have to accept that, but could take the money and then could come back within 6 years and ask for the final settlement. And that was a huge risk. It's a very risky mechanism. It's probably quite a standard mechanism, don't get me wrong, but you put in mitigating factors when you make decisions like that, and we didn't do that. So essentially, this was going to go wrong. And then the first opportunity that we got to know that it was going wrong, we could see it was going wrong, we just decided to use up all our reserve and resilience and keep sailing on in the hope that we would deliver everything. And in fact, we were contractually obliged to deliver some of it or pay it back. And yet no one seemed to have understood that risk. And that was what concerned me the most. And that comes back to this issue of good governance, both from politicians and from our senior managers. And I hope that's changed. And I think that because we've got the new structures in place, as well as new personnel. We can't just rely on new personnel because you make mistakes as personnel, even councillors like me make mistakes. So you've got to have mechanisms, which means that you are always being monitored, and you cannot take risks like the risks we took. This was almost always going to be overspent. And the first opportunity to do something about it, we decided just to pay off our loan with our credit card, and we all know that that's just not sustainable. So I'll leave you with that lovely analogy.
Thank you, Councillor Harrington. Neil, if I could start, what strikes me in a way about this is that at the moment we don't know the cost, the money we need to spend to deliver everything else. So it's plucking numbers out of the air to an extent at the moment to know whether it's 5 million or 10 million or whatever. So there are going to have to be subsequent governance decisions made once we find out a little bit more about how much more it's going to cost, or 5 years down the line. And in a way, this is a question for Councillor Harrington as much as you, Neil. But how much are we going to have to spend? Do we think? Where is that money going to come from? And is there a sort of limit? What's our commitment, do we think, going forward to the community to deliver something for the site? Is it going to be cheap and cheerful, or are we going to produce something which is decent, which people should know? Councillor Harrington, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll come in there. I mean, first of all, let's not limit ourselves, but I think actually you can deliver both something that is not overtly expensive and actually does a very good job and looks different and looks attractive. And as I said, we've got enough money in the budget. We still don't know what we still owe in terms of compulsory purchase orders. We think there's 1.5 million more to come. We've kind of accounted for that. There may be, if we don't reach a settlement with the one landowner, there may be more out of that. It's highly unlikely that we won't be left with, at least enough money to do the design work. And part of the decision process here is we're asking a lot of questions in this report, and we're asking for a lot of things to be done. But the one thing we're asking permission to actually do is to do that design work as soon as possible. And we will be going out to the very best in the market to do that. We will not be using our framework agreement just to use the thing that's, the people who are closest and easiest. It may be that we do use our local partners, Balfour Beatty and WSP, but we may be wanting to use someone who specifically suits our needs as an administration. So I think we can do, I don't think we need to spend an enormous sum of money to get a very, very good transport hub. We need to understand what it wants to do in terms of systems and functions, and how it looks is up to us. If rather it was green and beautiful and pleasant, then as I said, something ridiculously, over ambitious in terms of lots of block work and, the sort of arena, public arena that people who are public realm companies like to spend money on, but don't get much value back for us.
So Neil, do we have in you someone who has experience of these transport hubs? Bring that expertise to help us out.
Yes, we have plenty of contacts who can help us out. We have a new project delivery director in, Cassandra, who is very good, and we have a project manager working on this project who is also been here a couple of weeks, but is also a very capable regeneration project manager. The original budget in back in 2013, I think, was 6 million for the public realm and the transport hub. So we will have that budget in mind when we're briefing and putting the design together. But that's going to cover all of it, obviously. And I'm absolutely with Councillor Harrington. We need a clever design that delivers a great space and doesn't deliver a huge amount of structure. Because at the end of the day, with things like this, it's the space that matters. It's the bit you move around in, not the structure that you put around it. So we'll be making sure that we get a very good solution to the design.
If I can just add to that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and of course, once we've established the costs, we will have to come back through the governance process with those costs and potential funding sources.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Leader, that the point that Neil makes is absolutely spot on. We've got a beautiful Victorian railway station that we've not seen for about 8 years because we've had industrial units in front of them. So we tore those industrial units down as part of the compulsory purchase process. And then, the original proposals that I saw was for sticking back, bus shelters right in front of that building. So we don't need that. We need that building as it is, focused on, highlighted with proper, decent landscaping, and as I said, let's get a lovely orchard. Wouldn't it be lovely if you got off the train and came to Hereford and in front of you was an orchard in the, in the May blossom? That'd be a lot nicer than just repeating what's done sort of in any other place.
There are two things which come to my mind with this. First of all, is how long is this going to take? We talked about the Eastern Bridge taking 8 years. We've said to the officers we challenge you to do it in 5. So how long, Neil, do you think we can get this done?
Well, I'm happy to answer spare blushes, and then Neil can come in and contradict me if you'd like to. But the difference is, before, Leader, is we didn't have anyone inside our department to properly manage this. We had, let's be blunt. Austerity has devastated local councils. We've lost in one budget alone £62 million a year, essentially. That's revenue. We have, there was a transport team of about 40 people in 2010. There's probably there was about 3 internally when I came in as a cabinet member. What we've done in this report, and what we've done with the money that we agreed back in February and then agreed as a cabinet meeting recently, was provided that in-house expertise capacity in the likes of Neil and Cassandra. And that's what's going to make the difference. So I think in terms of speed, we can get things done quickly. I think we can get the design done. Now Neil can contradict me within a 6-month period max.
Neil, do you want to observe comments on that, the design, and then the build time as well?
Yeah, so I think the build time very much depends on the design, and I wouldn't want to comment on that. But certainly, we will have the brief for this piece of work, for the architect's brief, sorted in the next 4 or 5 weeks. We then have a short tender period to get, because obviously we need to tender for the appropriate architects to deal with it, because it will be quite a reasonable sized scheme. We won't be able to just directly appoint someone. So that'll be a couple of months in duration. And then I would have said another 3 months after that, we should be looking at agreed designs with members and looking at tendering the work and getting it built.
Well, my second question was really about public consultation. How is that going to fit in? I don't know if Councillor Harrington, you have any view about consulting with the public about these designs. We obviously don't want to hold things back, but we want to deliver what get input from.
Absolutely.
Shall I come back on that? No?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so as part of the architect's design fee will be public consultation as the design evolves, and not only public consultation, but most importantly, consultation with the stakeholders, we want this is for buses and we want it to work for them, and it's for cycling. We need it to work for the cyclists. So the special interest groups, as I would call them, are very important, as well as the public. And then, of course, there will be a further consultation, because we'll need to go through a planning process.
But if I could just add to that, Leader, that these things don't have to be formal. Lots of people have good ideas. There's lots of mechanisms to reach councillors like myself. They can email, they can put something in the public domain, they can, they can get that information across to us. But the consultation process that we use will normally be to speak to stakeholders slightly before we speak to the public, to understand what the stakeholders want in terms of the function, what's going to help them as bus companies. And then we speak to our, to the public to understand what they would like in terms of cyclists and people who want to, use the station, or what they would like the station to look like.
Okay, thank you. I've taken up more time than I thought. Councillor Norman.
Yes, thank you. And I'm really pleased to hear the commitment to some sort of really good quality design. I was on the planning committee that gave permission for both those extremely unattractive buildings that are on either side of the station, and along with a number of other councillors strongly objected, not just to the building, but to the lack of any sort of design plan, master plan, whatever, that was going to put anything in context. And so we've got what we've got. Very important buildings, very valuable, offering a great service, but it could have been so much better. So I really welcome the commitment to good design in what we're going to get beyond that. And in particular to the commitment to greenery, to tree planting. The orchard idea is a lovely one, absolutely love that. That's really great. And yes, we're talking about people using buses, walkers, cyclists. I've had a regular moan about how really difficult it is to get from the station across to the town at the moment. You really take your life in your hands, and I'm fit to run, but there's an awful lot of other people who can't do those things. So it's really crucial to get that right. But yes, people getting off a train or a bus or whatever, they need to be able to see something that's really attractive and welcoming and reflects our, the town and the county's characteristics. So I like your ideas very much and really welcome them. Thank you.
Other comments, Councillor? Sounds Crockett.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Mr. Taylor. It's a real shame that we've had to take so much time, effort, and more money to try and sort this issue out, long-standing issue out. But again, I thank you for doing that now, and hopefully now we can move forward, get over the past, and get on with the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hardy.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I've kind of lived with this project in opposition and now in administration. And I'm thankful to officers for the report that's come forward here. I think it's brought a lot of clarity to the situation. But it seems to be clear that this package of transport projects has been managed in a way that has sought to keep the financial picture muddy. The last administration repeatedly refused to address direct questions from the public and from councillors in council, in cabinet, and on audit and governance, seeking to clarify the finances. And therefore, I can only conclude that this was done deliberately. As the costs of the road project ballooned in their very early stages of the project's delivery, the funding for the link road and a separate but related scheme of sustainable transport and public realm projects, which was 100% funded by the LEP, were combined. And this allowed exactly the sort of overspends that were being exhibited at precisely the same time in the Blue School House scheme to be repeated on this project. And that means what happened was that all the other projects within the package were, I can think no other word for it, raided. And for as long as the total package budget of 40 million hadn't all been spent, there was some sort of pretense maintained that everything was okay and on track. But As an administration, we are in the throes of having to deliver the largest in-year savings programme that the council has ever faced, primarily due to COVID. And we are now faced with finding many millions of pounds to plug the hole that's been created in these projects' finances. I therefore support recommendation A in the report, which is simply a public acknowledgement for the first time of the reality of where we find ourselves. Of course, we must honour the commitments made to the Marches Let, which we inherited with this programme. And the means and the ways will have to be found to deliver on the project as promised. Presently, we do not know how much money is needed to deliver on those promises, but recommendations D and E in the report seek to make that unknown known, that known to us, which is something at least. As far as moving forward is concerned, I support recommendation C, which treats each project remaining as a discrete piece of work, which can be assigned a costed budget and its delivery then managed within that budget. And we must learn the lessons this time. Many aspects of the failures we see in the management of this programme are exactly the same as those identified in the Blue School case, which was happening at the same time. However, there are also further lessons to learn regarding things like the number of changes or compensation events which were made to the contract during the delivery phase of the road, and answer the question of whether those represented good value for money and whether we were managing the contract tightly in its delivery in order to minimise those compensation events. In addition, it is clear that additional land blocks were purchased under the cover of this project, additional to those that were needed specifically to deliver on the road. It is clearly not appropriate to have used funds within the project to pay for those new land assets. The council has a separate process by which we evaluate capital investment opportunities, and these appear to have been bypassed in the way in which these land blocks were acquired. We must also have made reports to our LEP funders on the progress that we were making on all of these projects, because the LEP has reported to government that all the economic benefits which were planned to flow from their funded project have already been delivered, and they themselves have drawn down match funding from central government on the back of those deliverables. Consequently, I would like to request that the work undertaken by SWAP under recommendation C will explicitly also include an investigation of the LEP funded elements of this programme and the way in which we have previously reported progress and spend. But in the round, I'm not happy with where we are. I don't think any of us can say that, but I'm far better that we knew what we were dealing with than that we didn't. We've spent 2 years since we came into office asking for the bad news to be brought to us by officers. We have shaken the tree and some elephants have fallen down upon us. And that hurts. That's tough to manage. You can hear them coming, but not until just before they hit you. So I think, as Councillor Harrington put it a slightly different way, we've reached the end of the line, shaking the tree, opening the cupboard, shining the sunlight into the corners. If there's anything else out there, and that is a question that was asked by either a member of the public or one of our own councillors, what else is there? What else? Well, I tell you what, now is the absolute jolly time. If anybody out there knows of anything else that's ticking away, now is the time to bring it out and put it on the table. We will own it. We will deal with it we will find a way forward and a way to resolve it, learn the lessons and move on. But I, for one, am fed up getting squashed by elephants. I do not want it to happen again. So I'm standing back from that tree and I'm politely asking any further elephants that are up there, could they gently climb down, please? And we'll deal with the elephants in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Any more comments, questions from Cabinet members? Who would like, anybody want to go next?
Jen signal.
Leader, Councillor Tyler, if that's possible.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Tyler.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm just really pleased to see the support before members today. Councillor Harvey has my points, but my general concern is how we allowed the final CPOs, compulsory purchase laws, to remain outstanding, and why were they out of the original? So I'm asking, can we be reassured that any further CPOs that the council will bring to the table, that they are fully scrutinised and that all our programmes will be protected going forward to make sure that we do not spend unnecessary money and we are under budget or in budget or out of budget as we go forward with our planned programmes? Thank you.
Are there any officers who would like to comment on that?
I can come back on that, Leader. Yeah, so what we can guarantee is that we'll make better provision in future if we need to CPO land than we have previously. It is a statutory process, and as Councillor Harrington explained, landowners are entitled to a payment very early on in the process, and then they have 6 years to come back to us to demonstrate the impact that the land purchase has had on their business or their them personally, and that is a statutory process. So you'll always get that last minute rush 6 years later of you haven't given me enough money. So, but what we can do is take a better view in the first place of what that might cost us and be a little more prepared than we were.
Thank you, Neil.
Right, well, I think I'll pass on to Councillor Councillor Davis.
Yeah, so as Cabinet Member for Commissioning and Procurement, I'm absolutely flabbergasted about the findings in this report. Many people have asked us what we've been doing as an administration since we took over. Much has been lobbied at us about the state of our roads, the lack of infrastructure and a lack of just getting it done. Well, this report should tell you exactly that. It's illustrative of an organisation with poor governance, poor commissioning, poor procurement and over-reliance on partners and a lack of transparency with the public and members. What I find even more frustrating was that we were being told this and we appeared to have done nothing. Instructions were given by swap audits. They told us what we did wrong in Dew School House and we didn't follow the instructions that we promised them we would. Opposition councillors and members of the public told us that we were overspending, that the budgets were looped together and that this could cause an issue, and we ignored that as well. This is the first step in us righting that wrong. It's about putting those things in place that mean these kinds of events should never happen again. I've got a number of questions and a couple of points regarding the report. The report specifically, you know what I'm like with equalities. I'm going to name a couple of things regarding the equalities. So at point 22, it says that further equality impact assessments will be carried out, etc., which is brilliant. I'm glad that that's in there. What I really would like there to be within it is something to say that not making this decision, so if we choose not to make this decision, this will have a significant detrimental effect on disabled members of society at the very least. It may also have detrimental effect on those that cannot afford to travel by car and instead take their own lives, as Councillor Norman has said, by crossing a junction that simply isn't safe. So I think that could be firmed up a bit just to make it very clear that actually the decision not to go ahead with this really would leave members of the public in danger. And it also, if we can talk about the climate emergency, it has huge effects on that and our ability to deliver our climate aspirations. The other one is just around, it says about we're going to speak with when other people are creating the schemes. I also want us to make sure that it says that we'll talk about that they comply with equality legislation. But I think we need to make it very clear they should be doing equality impact assessments as well. That is an obligation of them. They're doing something on behalf of the council, therefore they've got that equality duty. So if we can get that a little bit firmed up. And a question really, and I don't know if it's for Neil or if it's for the Section 151 officer or even the Chief Executive. I'm not sure who this is for, but much has been said about learning from mistakes. The public heard it before with Ofsted and our children's safeguarding, where we were told what we needed to do and we failed to do it. We've been blasted by Justice Keenan regarding this, and now we have an inadequate rating. We've now got this report that says about the shortcomings from within our commissioning, within our procurement, within our governance. So what is going to make this different this time? How can we ensure the public that these mistakes won't be made again? And specifically, how will we convince SWAP, who are our auditors, and Grant Thornton, that things will be different and we will follow all of their instructions?
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Shall I ask perhaps the Chief Executive to respond?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think that one is probably for me. And I think appropriate for me at this stage to say that to try and pull together the comments that have been made and from a kind of the Chief Executive's perspective and the Head of Paid Service, that really concerned about the way costs have escalated and the apparent lack of governance on how the costs have been communicated, and not just to councillors throughout the project, but to residents too, in terms of the communications we've given to residents and the confirmations we've given to residents as to progress with this particular project and the performance of this particular project. And that saddens me that we get to a point where we've had an in-depth investigation by officers, and we find that we've probably been providing inaccurate information in response to public questions, and that in some instances given inaccurate answers, which is untenable for me. It's not where we should be as a public authority. And I think you know me by now that all our decisions and recommendations should be transparent, understandable, and demonstrate value for money to the council and our local residents. It's a prerequisite for me. And since my arrival, I have noticed that the need for an increased focus on performance and how we manage our projects and how we hold officers accountable for the decisions that are taken. So it is a prerequisite to me that we have an independent SWAP investigation, and that it looks at the decisions that are taken, the information that was provided, and the integrity of those decisions that were taken. And I think it's also right to apologise to members and to residents for the management and communication failures throughout this project. We have written separately, or I have written separately, to residents who have raised questions to date, to kind of put the record straight, to apologise for the failures in the communicated information, and to give the assurances about the investigation that will take place and the close range performance of management of projects going forward. And that's the assurance we give as the officer corps, that the systems and processes will be put in place, that we will be held accountable for our performance in those projects, and provide that transparent or open information to members, so the decisions can be taken in good faith with the full range of information that's necessary to both take the decision and challenge the process and progress of projects as we go forward. So I think that for me sums up the officer position at this time. I'm happy to take questions on that as we go forward, but that's our statement at this time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'll go now to group leaders for any questions they may have. I start, if I may, with Councillor James, and then I'll go to Councillor Lester after Councillor James.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I've listened for some considerable time to the blame game that's going on. I'm sure that when previous administration will do the same back, and it doesn't push us anywhere forward. At least I was not involved in any of these problems. But the complex part is that there's a lack of, I think, of many members' understanding of the compulsory purchase process. At the beginning of the life of this council, we inherited a compulsory purchase process for Ayleston Park. Now, the previous council had actually put in a figure which was transferred to us, but compulsory purchase takes a very long time if it's fought, very long time. There are numerous cases of up 8-10 years that you can do it. So there's always an estimate of what it will cost. And the previous council, for which I was not a member, actually had a figure which they had estimated through the district valuer in those days. And when the final settlement was made and we inherited the project, it was twice the figure that we'd been advised by the district valuer. So, you know, it's a common occurrence. But what I want to know, because this is such a substantial, and really the problem we've got here is about the purchase of land purchase and premises purchases, how a more realistic valuation was not taken, estimate or guesstimate in this case, of a figure that would probably secure these particular properties, and that was incorporated into the project. So that is very, very serious. But also, the other point that I think needs considering, and I do ask that the investigation and the swap is totally independent and is not done by someone within the council. You know, that it has to be outside the council to look at this, and that we look at the timelines of all the various decisions and signing offs that have taken place during the whole of this project. Who was responsible for the valuations that led to this ultimately to this problem, and let us try and find out where not the blame, but because I'm certain numerous people, the cabinet members who at various stages were responsible for this, the chief executive. I mean, I think one of the problems we have that there has been a creeping, and I know a lot of people have said this, especially the current members who were on the council before this from the current administration, that there was a ethos or a style of government within or a management within the council, which implied that members were interfering if they asked the questions about the management of the council. That was for the officers, and there was a sort of arrogance that existed among some officers as to where the members' place was as far as the management of this council is concerned. I hope that is going to change with the current new chief executive. But it's a very different style from when I first got into local government to what now has been in place for a number of years within Herefordshire Council. But also, we have to ask the question that I suppose that much of the blame may lay with the previous administration, but this has only become public now, well over 2 years into the current administration. And so one has to ask, why has this been, we can give a matter of months grace to the current administration, but why is it now taken well over 2 years? I know the cabinet member has actually said he was aware of it 6 months, after 6 months, But why has it taken so long for this to become public and for the public to actually know? And the other thing that I and many other councillors, I think, and the public are concerned about are two things. Is the anti-people who own and drive cars that is sort of very current at the moment within this administration, and is very deeply resented by many people who have to use cars, which is the vast majority of the people in Herefordshire. But also the most important thing, when are the rest of the county going to see some sort of investment within their communities? We are seeing tens and tens of millions of pounds, and that is going to go on further, going into Hereford City, and virtually nothing going to many parts of the rest of the county. Enough is enough. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, well, I think we probably answer some of those questions.
I think we should give it a go. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I'm glad to hear. Sorry.
I think the one I'm particularly interested in is why it's taken 2 years.
Indeed, I quite have to tell you that. So initially when we came in, as I said, it was not raised with us for at least 6 months that there was an issue with compulsory purchases and the budgeting of this programme. We had already at that point, regardless of that, raised concerns with Section 151 officer, and we had an investigation going. Investigations take time to be done accurately, to be done carefully. We then obviously had COVID, which in a sense took some officers away, apparently, from work they should have been concentrating on. But the long and short of it is that we didn't have the responses from the audit. We hadn't conducted the investigations that needed to be conducted, which were quite tortuous. And quite frankly, we didn't have the leadership in place that we have now that was able to drive forward finally those investigations. So, as Councillor James is very fond of saying himself, we are where we are. The difference is that we did start immediately, even before it was told to us that there was an issue with compulsory purchase orders. We did start investigating the project to find out exactly what the issues were and why we hadn't yet been able to deliver the elements that were promised, aside from a city link road. In terms of, can I just raise this question about the cars as well? This attempt to portray this administration as anti-car. It's just quite, to be honest, for someone who's saying that we shouldn't be playing a blame game, it's quite demeaning. We have no intention of penalising people who have to use a vehicle. What we're trying to do is those people who wish to travel and can travel a different way in a modern 21st century, give them the opportunity to do that, especially in urban areas. And of course, people will have to use their vehicles to come in from further out. And if we can clear up some of the road space by getting people to travel better in the city, then we can do that much more quickly than spending money on huge road schemes.
Thank you,
and just one final point as well. When I made the decision in January 2021, there was no option. We were told we were about to be taken to the upper tribunal. The 6 years was up. If we didn't pay or show that we had the funds or the mechanism to pay those people who were seeking further payments, we would be taken to the upper tribunal. So on the basis that investigations were nearly complete and the processes were nearly complete, I was happy to make that decision. The previous cabinet member, 3 years before that, made a decision without understanding the implications. That's a concern I have.
Okay, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'd like to come back on the accusation that it's all about Hereford. I think, Councillor James, you need to remember that this is an inherited package of projects which were always to be about the city, in the same way as the Stronger Towns project was constrained to be about the city, and that was a constraint placed on funding by government. This was a constraint based on the bid that was made to the let. However, this administration, unlike the last one, is making significant investment to provide funding for economic development in all of the market towns across the county, and we are keen to extend economic growth and prosperity into the larger villages and the rural communities where they are wanting to to create those sorts of developments. We have to work with communities. That's the difference with us. When we have the choice, we are doing it differently. What we are also doing is owning the commitments that this council has taken on, that we've inherited from others, and we're fixing them.
Right, thank you very much. We'll move on then to Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Listen to lots of those comments with interest. Obviously, some I agree with, some I don't agree with. But I do like the sound of an apple orchard. And if we like the design, you can guarantee that we're happy to support that. On behalf of the Conservative group, I'm keen to make the following points. I think first off, I would like to thank the CEO, Paul Walker, for his candid statements, the public statement that went out, and obviously the comments that he made at this meeting. Obviously, there have been failures to communicate the true state of affairs regarding the final costs of these projects. And throughout the life of the projects, there were obviously opportunities to report any overspends. But it is really disappointing to note that this wasn't made until December 2020. We find this extremely disappointing, and we're as keen as anyone to find out why this situation came about. Naturally, we've reread the November 2017 reports with interest, and you note from that there's no admission whatsoever that there will be the costs of the magnitude that are now we're being made aware of. That the report itself says the forecast outturn remains at 40.6 million in accordance with the budgets. And in the conclusion, it says, paragraph 17, the City Link Road is due to be completed on time and within budget. Now, anyone presented with such a report would naturally wish to go on record as saying such. And it's obvious to us that, if a cabinet member or the leader of the council at the time was told of an overspend or potential of an overspend like this, you can guarantee that action would have been taken. And the cabinet member at the time has informed me that he always questioned the budgets, but was always given the answers that are like the ones that you find in the report of 2017. So it would appear that somebody either didn't know or they failed to communicate the true ramifications. But we're keen to learn the full facts before we pass our final judgment. Just a point, I note the questions, and I thank Councillor Harrington's response for saying that I'm somebody who attempts to accurately speak the truth as I find it. Thank you for that, and that's absolutely the case. So just on the point about the question from Councillor Wilding concerning the cycle path, there was some doubt about the nature of that cycle path, but the actual business case itself says that the cycle path was always intended to be off-road. It's the 0.8 kilometre off-road cycleway along the City Link Road. So in the plan, it always was the case that it was going to be off-road. So, it may be something that officers would like to clarify at this point. I think the main issue, though, is that we'd like to be clear about the fact that we believe that the project really needed to be done. It was the right decision, and we stand by that decision. It's led to the greater connectivity of the city centre, to the railway station. It's opened up that future land for development. And we've already seen the construction of the new medical centre and student accommodation. So all of these developments are significant steps in improving the city. And for me, that is absolutely crucial here to remember. But in terms of showing leadership, we as a group are proud of the fact that the Conservatives delivered The relocation of the cattle market provided many more shops and facilities in the city centre, delivered millions of pounds worth of investment in Hereford Enterprise Zone, including the Cyber Security Centre and just recently the business hub at the Shell store. You know, we had the vision to do all of this. And so there are many examples, I think, of where we've made the right decisions for Herefordshire. And that has shown, in my view, great leadership. The point about the Southern Link Road, I would just say that there was a procurement issue. Yeah, happy to acknowledge that. But that wouldn't have stopped the delivery of that road. And I really think that the cancellation of that road is probably one of the worst decisions that the coalition will ever make, because it is such a necessary project. And I know Councillor Harvey's concerns about now having to find extra funds, but you know, it does beg the question, how much of a hole in the budget has been created by the cancellation of the bypass projects? And that may be a question for another time to answer, but you know, making that decision has had huge impact on the council finances, and you know, much to the detriment of the economy of Herefordshire. So we've heard the concerns of the coalition about the operational ability of the council to deliver infrastructure projects, and I think that is going to be the concern for all members. Therefore, we really do look forward to seeing how the active steps are going to be taken to restore this confidence, because quite clearly there's much to do. And just leave you with this thought, the damage that, you know, has been caused, I think, in member relations is that you have a report like the one that is written on the 2017. It states something quite categorically, and so that makes us all, I am sure, very skeptical about the reports we receive. So something radical has got to happen to ensure that we don't have this situation again. Thank you for that.
Well, I'd certainly like to respond on the finance side of things. As Councillor Lester well knows, we inherited a South Wye transport package which had got a botched construction contract hanging off it and making it undeliverable within the time frame of the finances. You know, and that was down to your guys again. You know, you can chuck as much mud around as you like, but that's just another mess that we've had to clear up. So the fact that we made a decision after a review, a pause and review, which took a much more genuine look at all sustainable transport and travel options than had ever been allowed to come forward previously, to do something different, was in large part a consequence of having our hands partially tied behind our backs. Even if we'd wanted to, we wouldn't have been able to deliver the South Wye transport package. So the fact that we've had to decapitalise spending that your administration committed to and did deals with your let board over is just another mess we've had to clear up.
Indeed, if I can just add to that, Councillor Harvey, I mean, I understand things go wrong, we all understand that, but if you have an issue with a procurement and you keep it essentially quiet for 8 months, and that when the new administration arrives, it takes the same officers we're talking about a little while to tell us that there's an issue. The glib answer from the previous finance cabinet member was we would have just cancelled it and carried on. You couldn't have just cancelled it and carried on. It wasn't cancelled, it was live when we inherited it. And there was a serious risk of legal action against us if we had cancelled it. It was only because we actually started a review that we had a legitimate reason to cancel it. So I think it's a bit disingenuous to be claiming that, as Councillor Harvey said, the money that we had to pay off of funding that you took from often revenue pots that should have been spent on potholes to push it towards trying to make capitalisation easier. I think it's a bit rich to push that on us at this point, to be perfectly honest. And standing here as we do today, looking at your failure to deliver the Hereford City Centre transport package on time, with costs outstanding, I think once again we've got to be realistic and honest with each other about quite where, without quoting Councillor James again, but where blame or accountability in any way lies. But I do support his idea for supporting me to have an apple orchard, and I do think that what I said, that Councillor Lester is a truthful and honourable man.
I'll move on now to Councillor Matthews.
Leader, if I repeat different things, I lost internet for 3/4 of an hour. So if I, cut in and repeat what some people say, please forgive me. First of all, as far as the attractive route from the railway station to the city centre, it's that and all the other things on the key objectives of this programme is what we were recommending years ago. Because as you say, if people get off the railway train, it's the first appearance of the place that strikes the right note and the right appeal, and people passing through also noted. If I could just query a few questions on the recommendations. First of all, could I be told, SWAP is going to look into it, that's quite right, quite happy about that. How long will this take approximately? So if somebody could tell us that before we'll have all the information from their point of view. And secondly, on D further down, it says further delivery funding sought. From where will that funding be sought? Will it be from the left or will it be from government? Can those questions be answered? And I'd like to continue from there, please.
Chief Executive, can you answer?
I think I'll ask Andrew to comment on the swap and funding issue.
Yeah, so thank you, Leader. In terms of the timescale for SWAP to carry out their work, they're on standby. We've been discussing the draft terms of reference with them up until this meeting. So assuming the decision of Cabinet to go ahead, they will be starting their work from tomorrow. And I'll agree that with them. They've agreed they will do it as quickly as possible. I don't want to give you an exact time because I don't have an exact timetable. It will depend on how their audit goes, but I have assurance that it will be done as promptly, as quickly as they can. In terms of the funding, I don't think we're ruling in any funding source in or out at this point. It makes it very clear. We'll do our best to find alternative source of funding.
Peter, I'm absolutely appalled that these flaws in this project were left to fester for so long. In the budget in 2015-16, the spend in prior years, I've got the cabinet papers in front of me, the budget papers, 19.772 million. And what? You go to the budget the following year, and what have we got? We got expenditure to date, 10.658 million. So there were major financial projects in that way back in 1915-16, which were raised by myself and the excellent team of independent councillors I had around me at the time and other opposition members. So it saddens me greatly that things were allowed to continue without being properly researched. In fact, I personally wrote to the external auditors and highlighted these issues, and they come back and thanked me for my diligence in pointing that out. And they sent back a strong report to this council recommending that a system be put in with immediate effect for all capital projects to be closely monitored by a chosen and appropriate team. So that was right back to 15-16. So as I said, things have been allowed to go on, and it's sad that the public have yet again to read of the incompetence of this council from wherever it's come and wherever it's happened, but they're the sufferers. And when you think that we've got to consider, as Councillor Davis has said, the disposal of the town hall and places, people must be appalled to see us wasting money after money after money and then saying we can't afford to repair those buildings. So I've got great things there. Now, knowing Councillor Harrington, which I know pretty well, I've got to know him pretty well over the years since he's been there and before. Him and I go back quite a way. The first thing I would have done as cabinet members within the first week, I'd have been knocking on the door of my director, and I'd have been saying to him, what are the things that are of concern? What are the capital projects that we've got that haven't been addressed properly? And can you tell me now that everything is in order and going okay? Now, failing to do that, you can spread the fault for these discrepancies right across the council, right across the administration, the previous one, and to a certain extent, this one. So, Councillor Harrington, as you know, I've always spoken highly of you and your hard work, but I'm rather surprised for you to say it took you over 2 years to bring this out into the public domain. So that's something that concerns me greatly. As I said, like, all I can do now is work together to try and resolve this mess. And it's, unforgivable that with the children's services issue and other things festering as well, I understand, which I'm told, what the public will think, I don't know. And when it comes to Blue School House, the two people that picked that up, again, was myself and Councillor, forgot his name now, Councillor Roderick, sorry, John, highlighted that. So we, as independents, highlighted all these things a few years ago, and it's a pity that they weren't properly addressed. This is a right mess. It's very embarrassing, and the problem is that it isn't the previous administration or partly this administration. Wherever the fault lies, we all get labelled with it. All councillors, all elected members get labelled as being a useless bunch of so-and-so, so-and-sos. So let's hope that we can get things sorted out pretty rapidly and move on. And as the leader knows, him and I have been preaching on about value for money for long enough. Let's make sure that's in place. Now, when you put in your key objectives, and the last one at 6, help address the decline in Hereford's traditional role as a regional economic hub, the national agenda for economic growth. Folks, you haven't done much yet. And you've got to be honest, all the projects that's come forward at Rotherham so far were initiated by the previous administration. I'll be watching that very closely because members will know I've always kept a close eye on that. And growth and economic growth and a prosperous local economy and well-paid jobs are vital to our future. Thank you, Leader.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Massey, for your kind words and for your criticism as well. And I appreciate the information you have and the support you have from many of your residents in your constituency who are extremely well informed and are able to supply you with much detail, which is always very helpful for us as councillors. I asked those exact questions. We all asked those exact questions when we came in as administration. We sat in room after room, either with our own team or as a council, speaking to all officers and said, is there anything you should be telling us about? Is everything going well? What's going on? Everything up to scratch? And repeatedly told yes. Now, we soon discovered within a few months that wasn't the case, and we started investigations. There were, and as you well know, investigations that might have HR implications have to be carried out exceptionally carefully. And we also, in the meantime, had the greatest pandemic this world ever seen, where officers were taking off projects. So, believe me, I could have not acted any quicker, and we could not have brought things to the public in an honest and truthful manner and a sure manner until now. But I thank you for your suggestions.
Just one thing, Councillor Harrington. The information that was obtained re the financial issues didn't come from members of my constituents, it was myself and my colleagues. Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor Matthews.
Okay, move on to Councillor Tony Fagan, and then Councillor William Wilding.
Thank you. On behalf of the Greens, I'd just like to say that this is an eye-wateringly expensive piece of road, £30 million for 1 mile of tarmac that fails to serve all in our community properly. It's an indictment on those involved in this project that the elements that would have made our community in Hereford more resilient, the cycling and the walking and the flood alleviation, and the impact on our tourism offer by not addressing the public realm elements properly of the project are clear. It's very clear to see. It appears that those involved have completely stuck their heads in the sand regarding the climate emergency and where we are heading and the resilience that we need to develop. We welcome the administration and the new chief executive's commitment to ensuring that good project management and governance becomes a key feature of the Herefordshire Council's mode of operation. This is a perfect example of how infrastructure projects like this can spiral out of control. Operating in this way doesn't serve our residents and our communities, and looking at the road as it is, it begs the question whether we are actually breaching our equalities responsibilities, because the scheme as it stands doesn't seem to have benefited those who have, only seems to have benefited those who have access to a vehicle and not those with disabilities, children, the elderly, and those who choose not to or cannot afford to drive a car. Questions remain about the bloated fees that have culminated in no report on the design features of the public realm. And we hope that the swap report will flush out where the fees have gone to and how they were spent. Improving access to and the interchange infrastructure at Hereford Railway Station. This should really include any negotiations to use the existing rail infrastructure somehow to link the south of the city across the river with the railway station and the medical centre and the student accommodation. And we must move at pace to deliver proper infrastructure for walking and cycling. We now all know the implications on physical and mental health and the implications of increased traffic and car use on air quality and congestion, not to mention climate change impacts. Using natural flood technology to create a sink and a public recreation area rather than highly engineered flood management structures is bound to improve the flood resilience in the city, given what we now know about flooding and land use and flooding control. And finally, we look forward to the engagement with the public that will be required to deliver the rest of this project. We can see from the questions asked today that there is an extremely informed group of people out there who have followed this project from the outset and to whom the council is accountable, and we must ensure that their knowledge and expertise is fully considered as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon. Councillor
I'm responding on behalf of that. Independence. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I won't say it's been the most edifying of spectacles, the discussion, nor will I perhaps say that I'm going to follow the rather party protectionist line of some. I think the group that I'm involved with have expressed everything from horror of hearing about it, to disappointment, to sadness, to questioning how credulous some must have been before when looking at the particular area under debate today. The key, I feel, comes with that old phrase, he who fails to learn the lessons of history is destined to repeat them. The most important thing today that's coming out is that we are asking swap through the chief executive to the new chief executive. And I stress that point because I think this is a very important point, that we have a clean sheet, we have a lot of new faces, we have 50% new councillors for a start. So it is an opportunity to look at what's gone before, try to understand where things have gone wrong, and then move forward. One of the things that strikes me immediately, and I pick up a comment from our chief executive today, delay, agile working, going forwards with speed. If you look at paragraph 32 of the report, the budget for professional fees, the remaining elements, has increased from 563,000 in the original business case to 1,272,000 in the current forecast. This is a result of the delay to the progression of these elements. It's no wonder that costs increase if the timescales that we're working to are as protracted as they appear. Personally, I'm almost glad for a completely separate reason from that which has been expressed most often about the cancellation of bypass and the Southern Link Road. And that reason I'm sitting here is going, God, thank God we didn't go ahead with it, is I wonder what the costs of it would actually have been. How can I have any confidence in any of the costs that were put forward for that project when these show themselves to have been so far removed from the truth? I also would ask a question of a cabinet member. I seem to recall that there were some compulsory purchase orders involved in both of those projects. Where's the 6-year limit on those? Or are we going to have another surprise coming round the corner? Delay of the nature in which we're dealing fails to deal with the issues at the moment. For a start, it allows for inflation, for any figures you think about, any budgeting going out of the window. And anybody who's talking to anybody involved in the building world at the moment will tell you that any thoughts they had of any projects coming in on budget are rapidly disappearing as the inflation within that industry is extraordinary. So I have a plea that, yes, get the SWOT report. Let's look at it and make sure that we understand it, implement it fully. And that goes across all councillors of all shades, all colours, all varieties. I'm not really interested in who said what to what and whose Teflon shoulders are allowing things to fall off from their memory banks at the moment. It is a case of learning the lessons, working together and working with officers who I genuinely believe are trying their best on our behalf. It is no value in a blame culture, but there is great value in learning lessons and ensuring you don't repeat them. Thank you, Leader.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Jim. And I think just a couple of responses in relation to the question you asked about compensation events for the South Wide Transport Package SLR. They have all been settled at my insistence at the earliest opportunity. In relation to the other points you make, I think it's and in relation to inflation, I think there is a couple of different issues here. It is this issue of delay and not, well, first of all, not getting your estimates right, and then delay causing further increases. But I think there's also this question about value for money, which SWOT will look at, so that if people bid for projects, if they bid as public realm companies projects, that is a realistic bid, and then we have sufficient, the correct expertise within our contract management teams that can look at that and understand that, so that we don't get people putting in, potentially put in low bids and then seek to redress that by compensation events. In other words, expect that the price will always go up and it will always be paid. I think that's what we haven't done well in the past.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that debate. Just one observation, if I may, on the comments really from the group leaders. I noted that Councillor James was fairly critical of the management of the council, the style of management. He talked about some things being creeping, things presumably going downhill. So he's not. He was critical, I think, of the past councillors. I heard Councillor Matthews talking about major issues going back a long time and poor management within the council. So we have those two groups who are saying, there's poor management. We then have Councillor Lester who says, his administration showed leadership. But I just question, what sort of leadership were the Conservatives providing? I think that we are providing questioning and fantastic leadership. We are going to drive this council forward. We have a new chief executive. We are open, we are transparent, and we are going to drive this council so it has a most fantastic reputation. I was told the other day about Telford and Wrekin Council, how they have been awarded a prize for being one of the leading councils in the country. That is what we are going to try to do. Would you be trusted now? Would you be considered leading council if you had issues in childcare? A failed procurement process for the South West. And this is not an example of a good, well-led council in the past. We are changing things for the future. Thank you. So, we'll move on to the recommendation, if I may. So the recommendation, I don't know whether there are any amendments to this. I know in recommendation 3 there was a request that we dealt with the LEP funding. I don't know whether it requires amending to that.
I'm happy if you know my requests on the record, and we can have that wrapped into the scoping. I don't think we need to do chapter and verse on that recommendation here.
Leader, I have a slight recommendation as well, or request, and I hope it can be dealt in the same way. But paragraph 6, which talks about construction of City Link Road, it ends by saying, well, it talks about that the overall package was, the significant proportion of changes in traffic flows, with changes in traffic routing from Mountain Hill to College Road as a result of the performance of the signalised junction with the CLI towards Commercial Road. Then it says to realise the full benefit of these traffic flow movements, it will require the remaining elements of the HCTV to be completed. So that seems to imply that the very neutral first statement, which is neutral and correct in the sense that it is neutral, because actually there's been increases of traffic on College Road and Widemore Street, the top end of Widemore Street. I would rather that the last sentence, to realise the full benefit of these traffic flow movements, was changed and either dropped altogether or said something along the lines of, if we are to achieve the full the benefits that we've projected, we would need to look at. No, actually, I would just like it dropped. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense, and it's not truthful. Yeah. It implies it is strictly truthful. But there's an implication that there's been improvements, and there have been definite increases in delays on some of those routes.
Well, I think we can accept the report with that.
But that last sentence taken out.
Yes, Davis.
Yeah, sorry, just for clarification, I don't know if we can firm it up in this recommendation or whether an undertaking in this meeting is enough. Previously, swap audits have been written to not be in the public domain. So we've had a number of different reports that have it's been requested that they remain confidential. I would like to request and make it very clear on this that this swap audit, no matter what the findings are, that it's all in the public domain.
Not sure says that. Are there limitations from an HR perspective? Or?
No, I think it provided for its main to the audit committee.
There's a chance.
Could I suggest a further amendment with my colleagues at the end of item D to insert the text, and that a full climate and ecology impact assessment is included at design stage. Okay,
yeah, absolutely.
So shall I read the whole recommendation out?
To begin with, we just need that amendment agreed with the whole cabinet. That's okay.
Want to repeat those amendments?
Both of us.
No, just Councillor Chow just say proposed and seconded, I would say there, and then just everyone vote to say they agree that. And then
okay. Yes, okay. I propose that at the end of item D, text is added to say, and a full climate and ecology impact assessment is included at design stage.
I second that.
All those in favour? Okay, so I don't need to read the whole.
I think everyone's got the recommendations, unless you can share them on screen, but I don't know if we've got them ready to share on screen. No. Okay.
We have the recommendations. They're set out that one amendment to D. So all those in favour? Thank you. Right. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on then to the second item, which is something which, as is known, we are very keen on.
Leader. Discuss having a short break in between items.
Did we?
Exactly, you late.
All right. Yes, okay. My cabinet colleague suggested a short break. 5-minute break.
To have a schedule.
It's been present.
And yeah.
We did that.
Well, welcome back. We now come on to the next item of the agenda, which is a recommendation for potential sites to progress affordable housing delivery in Herefordshire. There's a market failure which we've identified. We want to provide housing within the county, and this is part of the programme progress we're making on this. This is for Tyler, Councillor Tyler. Hopefully she's still available remotely. Councillor Tyler, I don't know whether you'd like to introduce this subject. And then Robert Barton, if he is available to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm very happy to introduce the report to Cabinet today. I'm really excited about this report, and it's the next step for our delivery of affordable homes for Herefordshire. So today the paper seeks to agreement to proceed with the outline design of a number of selected council-owned sites identified across the county. A decision was taken on the 12th of November on how the council will progress the delivery of net carbon zero affordable housing over the next coming years. Back then, the council commissioned NG to complete a high-level feasibility study of selected council-owned sites to assess suitability for developing affordable housing. At paragraph 3, it states that there is an appendix that's available to view. And this has been taken from the view today because it does contain information related to financial or business affairs of the council. Concurrently, we have also engaged with John Christophers, an independent expert, to advise on building housing to maximise the environmental benefits to meet the council's climate emergency responsibilities. The report will shortly be reported to Cabinet to set out standards to raise expectations and inspire the council and others to provide the higher quality green homes that's needed. From the report, 2 sites have been identified: our Home Lacey and the Paddocks are within our control and deliverable to represent the first of net carbon zero within the county. By taking the sites through the planning system, we retain control over what is delivered and when, whilst also retaining the flexibility to decide who builds them depending on market conditions when we obtain planning. These sites are also in addition to the progress of work for delivery 180 affordable dwellings on the Edgar Street area, part of station approach regeneration, along with considering third-party land acquisitions. Members have been consulted and we have had no objections, but I would like to point out that there have been ongoing discussions with Councillor Summers regarding Home Lacey site, and we will continue to liaise with them and the Parish Council as we progress the development of Home Lacey. So to progress recommendations today, we are looking at B to D in recommendations of a budget of 400k from the 20 million allocated in the capital programme approved at Council in February 2021. That's a brief intro to the report, Leader, and I'd like to take questions or hand over to Robert to sort of state anything else I have missed through this introduction of the report. Many thanks.
Robert, I don't know whether you'd like to make some comments now.
Yes, I will, if I may, Chair. Yeah, I mean, this is essentially a decision that's put forward on a commercial basis because of the uncertainty in the market. These are the sites that we know we can deliver now, but as there's been much comment, as I'm sure is a well-worn path in terms of inflation in the general economy and in the construction market, the way we're proposing to bring these forward is to retain maximum control so that we can adapt in the event that something changes, particularly when it comes to inflation and costs that haven't been foreseen. So the idea would be to take these through planning ourselves. In particular, at Home Lacey, we retain 2 options depending on what happens with the market, which means we'd be taking planning for slightly more units. There'd be 40 units going to planning, where in actual fact we're intending on delivering just over 30. that's purely a risk coverage action, which I think is wise and appropriate given what's happening in the market in terms of people not knowing what will happen with the pandemic and Brexit and all the other factors that are going on in the economy at the moment. So that's the only other thing I would add to the report. I think the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions, observations, comments from anybody? Councillor Chance, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Councillor Tyler. Councillor Tyler, I was really glad that you mentioned the work that the council has been doing on developing net zero carbon building standards. That work is very close to finalisation. Can I just ask you to confirm that under recommendations B and C, the outline designs that will be commissioned will be in accordance with those standards that we're going to approve very shortly?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Chines. It's very important that we take the recommendations from John Christopher's report into any policies that we bring forward through the core review, because if we don't do that, it will be very difficult to challenge developers and how we bring the green agenda to our house building. So yes, I will really make sure that that report has concrete evidence through any of our core strategy and local plan policies, because that's what we have to achieve through our council house building.
Thanks. Sorry, I think I probably wasn't terribly clear with my question, but just to confirm that the designs that we're going to, under recommendations B and C, so for Home Lacey and the paddock, can you just confirm that they are going to be to net zero carbon standards?
I hope we will achieve carbon zero standards, Councillor Chines. That's what we are aiming to do through the whole this process. So that will be a recommendation that we will achieve net zero carbon standards.
Yeah, if I could add to that, the design brief will have net zero carbon. Councillor Chales, just for your benefit, the only potential scenario where that might need to be compromised would be if there were a compromise in terms of the Homes England grant. And at this stage, Homes England are being extremely positive about it. So the chances of that happening are very low.
Great. Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, just a small point with Councillor Tyler has already dealt with, so I thank you very much. It's just a plea to keep ward members up informed and up to date throughout these processes, and I appreciate that she's already given that commitment, and I welcome it. Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Harvey.
Yes, I welcome this report, and it may seem like a very small step along the journey, but I think, where we have small land blocks in the council's ownership, it is important that we look at those and decide how best they can contribute to the overall objectives that we have in bringing more affordable homes forward. And as we can see with the recommendations here, in some instances where those land blocks are in communities that welcome the right sort of development, and the scale of them fit with the aspirations of those communities, those small sites may come forward for actual development under the council scheme. In other instances, it may be best value for the public purse for us to increase the value of the sites through gaining planning permission and then selling those sites for development of houses that would not be appropriate to be affordable necessarily in those land locations, but will generate capital receipts that can then help us deliver affordable homes in other locations. So I think this is a very pragmatic approach that is starting to be taken forward here. And I absolutely understand it. It's quite a complicated message to get across to the wider public, who are obviously very keen and concerned about the shortfall in delivery of affordable homes in Herefordshire, particularly where, because we have a low wage economy at the moment, and pressing as we are, and as indeed the previous administration was, to try and change that. That's a very long road to push. So we're recognising that more affordable homes are needed because it's tough to increase the value, get higher value jobs attracted to the county. And if we have to do this in a number of steps, I think it's a sensible approach to take. Sometimes the shortest distance between two dots is a wiggly line, and in this instance, we're demonstrating where certainly with one land block we're taking a wiggly line approach to this, and I'm very keen that we use the capital receipt that eventually will come in order to accelerate the delivery of houses on the Edgar Street site or in other locations if the opportunity arises to bring those forward faster. So I'm supportive of this. I'm thankful to officers and to Councillor Tyler for all the hard work that she's put into this. And let's get on with it. Small step though it is.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of follow on from that, and it may be stating the obvious, but when we talk about affordable, we're not just talking about to rent or to buy, we're talking about to run as well. And I think the point that we probably all appreciate, but not everyone seems to, is that if we're talking about zero carbon, it's not just good for the environment, but it means a really cheap home to run because it'll be energy efficient, and that is good for bills essentially.
Castace.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple of things. So I like to right wrongs when they're reported. It's that whole fake news stuff. And one of the things that was logged at me on the weekend around this particular report and talking about social housing when the agenda was put up on the council's website was talking about, oh, you're going to give all of these, it's all about giving to immigrants, etc. Now, I think it would be really helpful for maybe, Robert, for you to explain the difference between social housing and about affordable housing and what these schemes are, who they're for, and what we're intending to do with them, because I think that's a really important point to get across. And then the second one is just to, when we're doing something really good for equalities, we really should shout it from the rooftops. And I think the report, maybe in the future or going forward, we make it really clear that by building these types of affordable homes, we support those with lower household incomes to be able to get on the ladder. It also will allow us, for those wishing to downsize, for example, due to their age or due to a disability, to be able to do so that they can manage their conditions. There are some really, really positive equality things that are really apparent with the plans moving forward. And I really would like us to start shouting about them, because I think people's perceptions of what affordable homes are just aren't quite accurate with what we're doing. So I don't know if Councillor Tyler or Robert want to give an explanation on that.
I can answer that if you want. It's a very good question, actually. In terms of affordable tenures, at the moment there are, there are four main tenures, essentially. There's social rent, affordable rent, shared ownership, and obviously private market housing, which can be rental or sale. In terms of what constitutes affordable, at the moment, Homes England are giving huge backing to affordable rent and shared ownership. So there's very little grant on social rented houses. In terms of what that means in terms of affordability for end user, on average, social rent, you'd be paying around about 50% of what you would be paying if you were renting in the market. If it were affordable rent, it would be 70 to 80%. If it's shared ownership by a combination of a mortgage and a part rent, it comes in at around about 85 to 90% usually. And obviously market rent or market sale is 100%. So that gives you an idea of what the tenures constitute for people in terms of affordability. It's very, very hard to do social rent at the moment. In fact, Homes England probably wouldn't back grant. And bearing in mind what we've said about zero carbon, we do have to pay for that somehow. So the aspiration at the moment is a combination of affordable rent and shared ownership. It may be that some of the sites, particularly the paddock, as was mentioned earlier, may need to be private sale sites just because of the price point and other economic factors. If that's the case, then our intention would be to use that to increase the amount of affordable elsewhere.
really grateful for that, Robert. I think it's a really good explanation of what the type of houses we're looking at. So what we're looking at is about a market value perhaps being reduced with regards to affordable, and then we've got shared ownership where we retain some of it, or whoever builds it, and then the other person owns part of it, and then gradually they may either move on, or we sell back part of that percentage to them. So I think that's really helpful for that to be out in the public domain about what we're building. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Councillor Crockett.
Thank you, Chairman. Robert, I just want to ask if you can give us reassurance for these two proposed sites that we actually do own the land, and that there's not going to be any hiccups with this planning process. I think it's a really good opportunity, but we need to make sure everything is in order.
Yes, we do own the land. We have one access issue to deal with on the paddock, but we own the adjacent land of which that access is to be done on. So that's an internal issue for us, and that land's not being used. So there are always issues with people challenging red lines on every single development, almost everywhere. Here, that risk is extremely low because we own the land and we've owned the land for some time.
Thank you for that assurance. So I think I'll go to the group leaders, start with Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I note the comments that have been made, and from our group's perspective, you know, we would expect that you would consider using these sites to provide housing. So we will be keen to see how these projects are developed, of course, but the overall aspiration to provide housing, good quality housing, and the right housing, you know, we would be undertaking ourselves, of course. So, you know, we wouldn't be critical there, but obviously we would like to see the details as these issues progress. If I can just swap hats for a moment and look at it in terms of general scrutiny, I know that there's been this issue raised about Home Lacey site, and that members of scrutiny would like this issue to go to scrutiny. So just anticipate that it may come before scrutiny, but then that would be a good thing, I think, because it would just give the opportunity of scrutiny to ensure that the ward member and the processes are done appropriately with council-owned sites. So if that comes onto the agenda, we will no doubt be discussing it further, but it's noted at this stage. Thank you.
Councillor Matthews.
Leader, Councillor Matthews and James have left the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fagan.
Yes, thank you. This is a great opportunity to develop zero carbon affordable housing, and the idea that the council could set an example of excellent building standards, energy efficiency, and promote car-free schemes is really welcome. Car-free affordable schemes. I think that it's important that the council do set an example as we look to how the future of housing and shaping our new communities actually develops. And one of the things I'm sure, given all the discussions today, that we need to make very sure of is that even at this stage, that this scheme is there's robust project management, so that as we go forward, we're not. We are building on good project management and governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fagan. Taking at the previous conversation we had, the last, it's very relevant for that. And yes, I could say something about ownership of land as well, but I'll resist that one for the moment. Okay, so I think I'll put this to the vote. Yes.
Can I speak as the ward councillor?
I'm sorry, David. So, do you mind if I just wait?
Yeah.
I've forgotten. Councillor Ginman. Sorry.
Thank you, Leader. Simple couple of comments regarding affordable housing. As you know, the definition of it's always been a difficult one, and it appears in various forms, various guises. One of the most important things with some of the affordable schemes in the past, and I being long in memory, can remember the Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, £60,000 houses, which ended up selling for over 200,000. The project at outset has to match up with what at the end it becomes. And I've already made a comment about the considerable concern there should be with regard to inflation of building materials at the moment. So that, as has been said just a moment ago, the importance of scrutiny, the importance of watching this project, being aware of the risks related. The other thing is that affordable housing has had a reputation in the past where, unfortunately, some of the standing charges weren't included in the affordable rent side of it. So it is, again, very important to make sure that all costs are considered when looking at this affordable title. It is also likely, and I would urge here, the comment that was made earlier on by one of the other leaders of groups, the rural community is currently suffering markedly from the fact that there is not housing for the people who live and grow up in those areas. Every house is now being bought up rapidly by those with money from outside of the area very often, and are keen to relocate to the countryside where occasionally the broadband does work, and then they are content to be there, but it puts up the price. I mean, the average price in many of the areas that we're looking at has gone up probably 80,000, 100,000 even this year on the 300,000, 400,000 pound house. So the word affordable, we really have got to get to grips with how we provide housing in the rural community for those who work, and they do work in that rural community, but are finding themselves being driven out. It's a problem that we're not alone in. It's a problem that I accept is common across the country. But perhaps in your position when you are talking to the relevant ministers, I know you have the opportunity on occasions, I would ask that you take that particular consideration forward, whilst we also start to be perhaps a little adventurous and novel in thinking as to how we might not just deal with these sites that are here on our agenda today, but on those where we might be able to perhaps buy affordable housing or achieve that by other means.
Thank you, Councillor Jim. Councillor Tyler, do you want to comment on that?
No, I just, it is difficult, isn't it? And I just want to reiterate and go back over some comments regarding parish and our movement forward. We will be scrutinised because this is a unique project for the council. We haven't built our own council houses for many, many years. So we will be scrutinised, we'll be watched and made sure that all our affordable dwellings are affordable for our local families and population of the county. I welcome the scrutiny because that's what we have to do. And I really need to make sure that they are affordable. They are generally affordable. And we have a worry of our inflation costs. We're coming out of a pandemic and we are coming from Brexit. So it's going to have a knock-on effect of how we deliver these properties. So we will be vigilant on how we approach this development across the county, making sure that we hear and we listen to our communities who generally need to be on the housing market ladder. And that's how we will proceed over the next coming 12 months or 2 years and beyond to deliver, to be an exemplar county of our own generally affordable housing schemes like some other cities are currently doing. So thank you.
Councillor Summers, as ward councillor.
Thank you, Chair. This has been going on for a few years now. Keep Hope were going to be involved to start with. There was a lot of work done on checking water labels and where the well was and all the neighbour, etc., etc. All that for me seems to have gone by the way. It should be there somewhere. I'd like to see more on it. All the reports that were done. So we have information already on the Home Mason site. I know Keepmo came up with saying building 25 houses. I just heard 40 houses. Am I right, Robert?
Initially, there was a scheme. I think there was more than 30 houses, but it was more of a proving layout. I don't think it was a serious.
Well, I have,
doing it.
I have correspondence with 25 houses. I sat there with Richard Gadd, and we looked at the time they were thinking of doing prefabricated homes, which looked really good. They had all the brochures there for them. So I'm not sure the site will withstand 40 houses. I was concerned with the 25 houses. I'm also concerned with the drainage going into the old railway line, which I think in future could be used for something else. We don't know what that could be yet, but to drain the whole site into there would be, I was against that. So they said we could perhaps go with 21 houses. So that's the last I've heard. That was before COVID, and of course we had COVID in between, and communication has kind of become zero, except for when someone wanted to purchase part of the land to extend their boundaries and having some bushes cut down. Now I'm hearing again that it's back up on track. So I've been left out of the picture. I've asked Robert to include me again, and I hope to meet with him. But we need to look at the stuff that's already been done with this. And without putting more money, like what Keep Mode did, what was found out. I know there was a problem with a neighbor that they're going over on that line. So there's more here than, I'd like to be more informed. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. So there's an offer there to meet with Ms. Martin. I'm sure that can be arranged. Thank you very much. Any other observations from anybody? Want to miss anybody?
Excuse me, Leader, can I just...
Oh, sorry, Councillor Tyler.
That's fine. Obviously, we're relating to Keep Moat. That was before my time in council. So I will make sure, and I promise that I will be in touch with Councillor Summers through all the problems that have been highlighted. And we need, I give him my reassurance that any or other members of the Cabinet and our councillors that any sites that come forward through our investigation feasibility and any land acquisition that we go through with third party, all members will be consulted upon before any development or any other things are looked into. And I will reassure that as we go through the process of delivering our affordable, generally affordable homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyler.
I apologise for my mixed words. I am not feeling very well today.
Doing very well. It's very good having this Zoom remote meeting for this.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'd just like to say on a broader note, I've only recently taken over the planning portfolio, but we are going through an update process for the core strategy. And so I'd like to put a plea out for any neighbourhood plan groups, parishes, communities that would be interested to discuss how affordable homes of any sort or homes involving community build projects that they think we might be able to help make happen, to please get in touch and start talking to us early so that we can see how we can work with you to help to realise your ambitions for affordable homes in your communities.
Thank you. Yeah, good. Yeah, worth broadcasting that. Thank you very much. Okay, well, I think I'll move on to the recommendation. It's set out in the papers. I don't propose to read it all as it is. So if I can ask all those in favour of this recommendation, if they would like to show. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you to everyone for attending. The next meeting is back here in 1 week's time, 29th of July. There are 5 things on the agenda. Papers have already been published. So we look forward to another meeting in a week's time. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Could the live streaming now be stopped?
Thank you.